Hi, my name is Elizabeth O Hare, and I'm a clinical assistant professor in the Department of Biology. And in my Facet Faculty Spotlight, I'll be outlining some of the various assessments that I utilize to identify student progress and understanding throughout each unit in my Biology 191 course this past spring. Specifically, I'll be giving an overview of how I use some of the following: weekly assessments, discussing commonly missed quiz and exam questions, drawing out concepts for extra credit, topic-specific problem sets, other resources that I provide to students to aid in their success, and then lastly, exam question pools. So the course I teach is a challenging class, and as such, I want to make sure that students are studying all along and are not cramming at the last minute for their unit exams. As instructors, we want students to retain the information for continued success, not only in the specific class that they're enrolled in, our class, right? But for their success in their future classes, their anticipated career, and to be able to apply the information they learn to new situations. We, as instructors and as people that have gone through the education system, know that cramming for an exam doesn't help your brain retain the knowledge in the long term. So to help my students build their understanding of the concepts on a deeper level, I indirectly force my students to continue to review the material each week by offering assessments such as homework worksheets, short concept quizzes, and end-of-unit quizzes, and even extra credit, all of which build the student up to taking the unit exam. Individually, these different homeworks and quiz activities are worth not a lot of points. So if a student does not perform well on it, it does not greatly alter their grade. These assessments are actually beneficial on both sides. First, it tells the student where they actually need to further focus on, what they need to review, or what they need to ask questions on so that they can be better prepared for future assessments. For the instructor, myself, right, I can go in then after all the students have taken the assessment and can then check for student comprehension by looking at the grades for each question. And if students miss a particular question or commonly miss a question, I can then go in and identify the issue and then review that concept with the students by using one of several methods. Sometimes I'll go in and I'll create a short kind of special PowerPoint slide or slides to review the concept, and I'll either present the topic at the start of lecture when we met face-to-face or in a special recorded PowerPoint that I posted online. And then sometimes I actually type up an explanation that will actually include supplemental images that I either drew or pulled from the internet. In addition to either this PowerPoint or the written explanation, sometimes I'll even create a short worksheet or a homework activity to test their knowledge, or even sometimes I'll actually give a discussion thread where students have to comment on the different topics so I can gauge their understanding. And then other times I'll even give the students a short quiz on the revisited information, either worth a few points or even extra credit, to make sure that they're all on the same page. Now, as far as extra credit goes for my course, I offer students the opportunity to earn up to 2% extra credit. So for some of the extra credit opportunities, I actually ask my students to draw out the concepts that we discuss in lecture. So why do I actually have them draw it out? Well, I learned that throughout the years when I was going through school that I learned best by seeing the information numerous times. When I went through school, the instructors focused in and taught just the details of a topic but failed to provide information on the big picture. So for me to learn the information and be able to critically think about it, I actually drew out the information multiple times. And what I came to find is that by the third or fourth time I drew out the information, I no longer needed to reference my notes. And I also found that in my studies that drawing out the concepts helped me take a step back and see where the information fit in the big picture, and then I was able to then apply that information to new concepts. And so that I hope that the students that learn the same fashion that I did could benefit from this activity. So what actually happens, right? So what happens is first I draw out the information that I want students to know, either in class when we met face-to-face or in a recorded PowerPoint. And after I cover it, I then post a final cleaned up version on Blackboard for students to reference when they're drawing out their concept for what I assume is the second time, because I'm assuming that they followed along the first time during lecture. Students then submit the extra credit images. They take a picture with their phone and then upload it to Blackboard. I then skim the images and provide comment bubbles regarding the essential points they failed to include or did not grasp. And then students are asked to review the feedback that I provide to them. And over here along the side, what I have is two different submissions from two different students from this past semester. One extra credit opportunity asked students to draw out the cell cycle 5 times, and then another activity asked them to draw out the basic steps of aerobic glucose catabolism. And then later what students then did is were then able to take their hand-drawn images and then add information that we learned or further learned in class when we went more in depth on the information, and they can then use these images to critically think about the concept. So other times I'll actually turn the tables and put the responsibility on the students by having them self-assess their understanding. Specifically, what I have done is actually created concept problem sets, supplemental worksheets, and unit review packets with corresponding answer keys. And these answer keys all include kind of step-by-steps how to complete each problem, as well as an explanation, any tips for solving the question. I also create unit study questions that list a variety of topics that students should be able to thoroughly discuss regarding the main concepts taught in lecture. And this helps students then identify the main concepts, because sometimes in biology, all the amount of information can be overwhelming. So for this, actually, I do not provide the answers. It is on the student to look up the information from lecture or to ask me questions about the material specifically. And as always, I always remind the students that the questions and the problems that I provide to the student is not all the information they need to know. These documents are to supplement their normal review of the lecture material, because sometimes they think that that's all they need to know. Now, there's some other resources that I provide in my students to aid in their success. One of these includes the development of a Biology 191 Community Help Blackboard site that I developed a couple semesters ago. Now, this site is available for any Biology 191 student enrolled in the course and contains videos, animations on main concepts taught in the course, short terminology and concept quizzes, links to approved websites, supplemental worksheets that I made, and a discussion board that is answered by Biology 191 undergraduate learning assistants. I also, at the start of the semester, provide 2 different documents: as How to Succeed in Biology 191 and a study tips document. Now, at the start of the semester, I always tell my students to get rid of the notion that they'll learn everything they need to know during the 3 hours of lecture each week. Various publications, I tell them, have estimated that for every 1 hour in class time that they have per week for the class, students should be spending 3 to 4 hours outside of class effectively studying. And so that then means that they should be spending anywhere between 9 and 12 hours each week effectively reviewing, studying, learning, and understanding and applying the information on their own. So the question then becomes, how can students most profitably spend these hours outside class? This How to Succeed document summarizes some strategies that I've outlined to help students succeed in my course. And then I have the study tips document. And this document basically just outlines some typical and the usual tactics for each unit, which gives them advice on what students should do at the beginning of each unit, during each unit, a few days before the exam, and just some general study information. And all this information, I tell them, can be applied to other courses that they're taking, and I typically point this out to them. For this particular semester, this past semester, I made a discussion board, and here students can post questions about each lecture unit that they watch, and I told students to consider this kind of posting questions on the thread as raising their hand in class. They were encouraged to email me directly if they didn't feel comfortable doing that, or come to office hours to ask questions. And then last but not least, what I did for this past semester, because we moved online, was to offer our 24-hour student chat room. And this was available for students to meet up with other friends in the class to talk about different class concepts and lecture material. So all of these activities and assessments that I just discussed are provided to my students so that they can hopefully rock the unit in the final exams and then take that knowledge to be successful in their future courses. However, a major concern and challenge that we probably all encountered this past semester once we shifted from in-person exams to online exams was cheating. So to prevent cheating, what I did for the exams was create question pools. Specifically, what I did was create a question, whether it be a short answer question or a multiple choice question, and then I made different versions of the exact same question. For these questions, I asked the exact same question and expected the exact same answers, but the only thing that differed are the example or the scenario used. The image, if I included an image, or sometimes I would even just change the first sentence in the question. Over here along the side, I have a couple different examples of short answer questions and multiple choice questions. And everything I have here highlighted is just the differences between those two questions. Here, it's just the intro sentence that's changed and the image that's changed and the name of the protein that has changed. Everything else, the questions that I'm actually asking and the answer that I'm expecting is exactly the same. And here are my multiple choice questions. The only thing that changed here was the intro question and the image that I used to correspond to that particular multiple choice question. Again, the answer that I'm expecting is the exact same answer throughout all of the different variations of the question. This tactic I thought was pretty good to use on online quizzes and exams, is also for large sections as well. It helps, I believe, maintain equality between students, since no question is harder than another student's question, since they're all getting exactly and essentially the same question, but the example or the scenario used is different. And none of the scenarios that I discussed and these different questions were used as examples in classes, so everybody's on the same playing field. And this then helps prevent students, or hopefully helps prevent students from comparing questions with classmates, Googling the questions, and they can't really do this because I made these questions up from scratch. And then lastly, those students that are taking pictures of the questions and posting online, chances are then less likely, because there's so many different renditions of the question, that they're going to come across the question that they have posted online as an image. So all in all, personally, I found that these different assessments were effective in student learning and success this past semester, as the average for my class on the exams and quizzes were the highest since I've ever been teaching this course. And I hope that these different assessment ideas are useful for you as you go forward and teach your classes. Thanks for listening to my Faculty Spotlight, and I hope you have a good day.